Good, oh, good morning. Cheers. Buenos dias. Buen provecho, I think. Okay. Check audio. I hear some noise. Yep. I think we're good. Okay. Good morning. Let me move this out of the way. I think it's a good morning. If I survive, it'll be a good morning. How we doing? All signs indicate we are successfully streaming. So let's get on with it. And it is January 10th, 2025. We survived 2024. Oh my gosh. Do you notice? You see my mistake? Look at that. I put January 10th, 2024. Let's fix that to 2025. And man, what am I doing? I tell you, the interns around here, they are just not earning their keep. Okay, so I fixed the date, 2025. How's that for some live on the fly, high quality video production? And ask your question. Send a comment on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Greetings. I have been gone for a couple weeks because I was basically off from December 24th through January 4th, I think, something like that. I did a little bit of work in between, but was with the family for this 2,200 mile road trip. Not my idea. For some reason, I can only get Google Maps to put so many stops in there. And even when I try to estimate, it's only coming up with 1,860 miles only. But my little trip odometer says 2,200 miles. So not sure where the extra 400 miles, 180, 300, whatever, extra miles snuck in. But yes, it was over 28 hours of driving to Death Valley, to Las Vegas, to Park City, to Salt Lake, to Page, Arizona, and then to Vegas, and then Los Angeles. So it was a lot of driving. I do not want to repeat that anytime soon, but we did have fun. So what did you do for your holidays? Hopefully got some rest. And Tanya and I were on a call, and she was saying that it was like she didn't get any work done, but she didn't get a break because it's like we had a couple days of work, then we had the holiday, then a couple days of work, then a weekend, and then just repeatedly interrupted throughout the weekend or holidays or whatever. So we did a little work, we did a little emails, but not terribly productive time. So, Feliz Año Nuevo. Cheers. Happy New Year. This is Death Valley, California. I thought I had been there, but what I saw there, I didn't recognize. So it was fascinating. It is in the absolute middle of nowhere. And we were driving, it just kept getting more and more desolate and just like, where are we? We had no idea where we were. I was just following GPS and just winding road in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And we eventually encountered the dry, I think they're dry lake beds or basically salt beds. Middle of the desert, massive blanket of salt for miles. And you could just walk out there like it's the biggest, ski resort in the world. And so very fascinating. I think they said it gets up to 130 degrees in the basin there in Death Valley. So that was interesting, kind of bleak, but interesting. We finally made it to our destination up in Utah. And of course, in the middle of a snowstorm, what is the first thing we have? Ice cream milkshakes, naturally. So that was good. That's at Dairy Keen in Heber, Utah. Great place. And then my wife tried snowboarding and she loved it. She had a great time. Despite being battered and bruised and sore, she had a good time. So good for her. I choose to not do skiing or snowboarding because I don't want to end up in the hospital for good reason. So, and then I got to meet up with my partner in crime, Tanya Henderson, in beautiful Park City. We have an office in Park City. So, got to did a couple days of work in the office and actually got a little bit done. So that was productive. And then during the holiday, I experienced the coldest weather that I've ever experienced. The prior record was Fargo, North Dakota. I visited there in like 2007 or something, and it was a cold front, and it was a balmy 13 degrees Fahrenheit, but with the 20, 30 mile an hour winds, it was probably lower. It was staggeringly cold there. But that was 13 Fahrenheit. And now I have a new record of Utah at 4 degrees Fahrenheit. So that was pretty chilly. And it snowed for several days. We had a good time. So, and then after we left Utah, we headed down to Page, Arizona, and checked out I guess it's called Antelope Canyon, and there are various branches. We did Canyon X, I guess. So yeah, that was fun, interesting. You walk around these carved canyons that are caused by erosion. Really beautiful place. So yeah. And then, hope you all had a good holiday. Oh, my big head's in the way. So, weekly projects. Let's scoot that down there. Oh, I guess not. So, ERP Center of Excellence Berlin projects. We are finally transitioning from full-time nonstop training to working on projects. So someone's going to actually try to build something. Other people are going to try to support the system. So it'll be interesting. We'll see where it goes. And internally, we are working on our new subscription management dashboard. We, over the last couple of years, we had different ideas of how we were going to do this. We thought CRM was the way to go. We were going to build things in CRM because we thought we were going to do support there. But we've kind of ditched CRM for support. Don't think it's a great solution. I'm just not a fan of Microsoft CRM, especially for a help desk. So now that we have the ERP support team dedicated help desk, no need to use CRM for that. I think Freshdesk is a much better solution than trying to use CRM. And so then we're kind of freed up from not requiring CRM for our subscription management. So we have decided to develop that in Business Central, which shall be interesting. It's much easier for us to do that. It's much easier just logistically because we all have team member license for timesheets and everything. So just one less system in the mix to avoid CRM. So, and yes, I do have a cold from the wonderful fan. So also this week, which my photo was out of order here. This week, you may have heard that Los Angeles is just a blazing inferno. I don't know. I didn't know this was happening. I just started getting messages. Steve, are you alive? Steve, are you okay? I was like, what are you talking about? And apparently, unbeknownst to me, some fires had started. And this is several days old. So they're probably bigger by now. But this is thousands of acres in, I don't know, it's north of me, northern LA County, above Pasadena, Glendale, Pacific Palisades, Santa Monica. Those are brush-covered mountains. So big brush fires, and I'm the little green pin down here in the urban concrete jungle. So I think I'm fine, but the smoke is pretty crazy, and that's what this photo is. That's what this photo is. This was waking up in the morning, early morning, and just, that's not sunrise, that's smoke. So it's been interesting. Yeah, so windows closed, HEPA filters on, and yeah, welcome to Los Angeles. And the homes in these areas up by the hills the combined value is just off the charts. So it's going to be a rough year for many people, Los Angeles County and California. But I am surviving. On to Monday, lunes. Had yet another call with a customer, same customer, but just a final follow-up call to do a review of a design for a SaaS a SaaS solution. There's a SaaS service. They want to integrate to BC, but that SaaS service does not support MEM. And so they would like us to develop that integration and provide MEM support. So looks like we're going to go forward with that. Pretty big project, fairly complex, lots of moving pieces, but we've done something similar with another industry-specific solution. So that's looking like we might get the go-ahead today or Monday, and that'll be our new project. And that will likely be an AppSource app. So yeah, that's going well. And Team Berlin, ERP Center of Excellence, taught me something I didn't know. If you are wondering how you might navigate to AppSource to find an app for Business Central and install it, there are a few ways to do it. But one way that I was unaware of, it's kind of a hack, kind of a shortcut, is in Business Central, you can click on the wonderfully named waffle button to open up a slew of icons that you normally, I never use this menu or go this route, but David found that if you click on the waffle, click on add-ins, that takes you over to AppSource. Now, it does pre-filter for Microsoft 365, not Dynamics 365. But if you clear the filter, there you are. You're in AppSource. So that was a quick and easy shortcut. 2 clicks to get to AppSource from Business Central. It's faster than using Tell Me and searching for AppSource, and it's faster than Googling and trying to navigate to AppSource otherwise. So that was kind of a little Easter egg that I did not know about. As long as you're okay removing the filter and know where you're going, it's pretty slick. So kudos to David in Berlin, El Salvador. Now, once you get to AppSource, you may notice, we noticed this, multiple people on our team noticed this, when you try to install the AppSource app, you are prompted for this. We're not quite sure where this is coming from. I don't know if it's a change. I think from what I read, it's a change to AppSource, something about AppSource authentication or permissions or whatever. You may be prompted to sign into AppSource. And it's kind of puzzling because you're already logged into BC. And so the Berlin team was like, all of them were fine except for one person got this prompt. And so we're like, what's going on? He had, I think, authentication in Microsoft changed as well because he was getting prompted for 2FA, the Microsoft Authenticator code, but he hadn't set up 2FA on his account at all. So he couldn't log in. So I had to go into Azure. I had to clear his 2FA configuration. It said it was configured. I cleared it. He had to reset it up. He had to re-log in, and then this went away. So I think it's multiple things going on, but we had other people report this, and as partners, they were unable to install AppSource apps in customer environments. Apparently now you have to have the customer admin, correct me if I'm wrong, or send me a link as to what the deal is on this. A customer admin has to perform the AppSource app installation, which is an impediment now for partner support. So we'll see where that goes. And after Monday, I turned off, finally, after years of loyal service from my SonicWall VPN, I closed port 443 on my firewall. Because over the holidays and when I got home on the 4th, I was just flooded with VPN attacks. So all of these alerts are VPN attack notifications on my SonicWall SMA VPN appliance. And this time it was a little different. There are 2 attacks. This was the command injection. And so people are trying to inject PHP and shell commands and other things in order to exploit. I believe there's probably an older vulnerability that's been patched, but like I can see the command, I can see exactly what they're doing. And I was like, great, here we go again. And then there was also just a flood of credential stuffing. And this was a little more sophisticated than the other credential stuffing attacks that I've seen on the VPN. So it's like, that's it. I'm done with it. And I closed off the port because VPN days are numbered. If you have an open port and you have a VPN, you are just asking for trouble. It's just a matter of when. And if you think you're immune, you have you are asking for some high risk scenarios there. So, and a little more news on that later. So I have shut down my VPN, will no longer be using it. I am currently using Tailscale as a temporary alternative. Seems to work okay, but the configuration is kind of tricky. And I don't think it's what I would call an enterprise grade remote access solution in terms of proper access control, centralized monitoring, logging, SIM, syslog activity, things like that. It's just it's not as user friendly as I'd like. So I'm looking into I need to ask about the SonicWall SaaS VPN solution apparently. So I want an agent on my network that does, that basically connects with a hosted server so that I do not have any open ports on my network. It just goes through that hosted solution. And then moving on to Tuesday, Martes. Everyone in the family, except for my wife, my kids had colds. So kid number one was, I had a cold, sick kid at home, missed school. So that was my Tuesday. Welcome. And then I had the lovely task of bug hunting in Dynamics GP 18.4 to 18.7, if you're familiar with those versions. And it wasn't the core GP application. That appears to work okay. But if you're familiar with GP, there are components that have not been updated, maintained, or fixed since 2013 at the latest. And so we are dealing with the slow degradation and signs of neglect of the ancillary components of Dynamics GP that are 12 plus years old in terms of the attention they've received. And so I have several hundred customers that I support on GP, and we have had several that have identified they're starting to get an error in our ISV solution. It's not our ISV solution. It's actually a bug in GP that was introduced around 18.4. So finally did additional testing, finally confirmed that it is a bug in the GP DPS component. And I had to do some pretty deep scripting in order to track that down. So found the errors. We're now speaking with our GP Dex developer to see if he can come up with a fix for it. So we're essentially putting duct tape Band-Aids on GP because Microsoft is no longer supporting these ancillary components that hundreds, if not thousands, of customers are still trying to use. So these are the challenges of supporting 12-year-old software. Even though 18.7 is technically current, many of the underlying components that businesses need to use as part of their ERP solution are not maintained. And so they're breaking left and right, and it's getting a little harder to maintain. So I'm starting to see the warning signs there. I still support it. Most of my stuff is working fine, but we are having to do some duct tape and twine workarounds. And back to the lovely world of VPN. If you think you're safe, if you say, Steve, you shouldn't use SonicWall, you should use XYZ VPN. Well, 2 days after I closed down my VPN, shut it off, I get this notification from SonicWall. This is a series of CVEs with a CVSS score of 8.2, which is pretty high on a scale of 9 or 10. And it consists of 4 vulnerabilities, at least 2 of which I believe were considered actively exploited 0 days, 2 of which were part of the SSL VPN stack used by SonicWall. I think it's like there's a 0 day in Apache or whatever for the web service components of the SSL VPN, and that's what SonicWall uses. It's not necessarily SonicWall's implementation, but nonetheless, the 0 days CVEs exist, and you have to upgrade 2 versions in order to fix these bugs. So 2 days after I shut down my VPN, I get the notification of 0 days. So you say, well, Steve, SonicWall is hot garbage. I have the super duper fancy VPN that's much better. Tell me more. As Ivanti VPN announces they have 0-day vulnerabilities that are being actively exploited. So, yeah, every single security vendor, every single network vendor has had 0 days in their VPN, in their gateways, in their edge devices, in their routers, in their admin management interfaces. There is no escape from this. If you have any open ports on your network, you are in deep trouble. Even if you don't, you could be at risk, but any open ports, you're just begging for exploits. Wednesday, we got a support ticket where a customer was saying, yeah, I need a new Business Central license because our BC ISV says that they need a dedicated Business Central Essentials full user license in order to support their use of the API. Now, this is an interesting one. I hadn't heard that interpretation before. So I've done this numerous times over the years. And to this day, despite reading it again this week, I am not an expert. But fortunately, Yun Chu, as he does, timely tweet on January 4th of the new and flashy Dynamics 365 licensing guide for January 2025. Check it out, hot off the presses. So I had just seen his tweet, so I knew exactly where to look. I didn't go to the web or anything. I just went to his Twitter account, clicked on the link, downloaded the licensing guide, and they really slimmed it down. I think it was only 25 pages or something like that. So I was able to jump to the Dynamics 365 multiplexing section because I kind of knew that that's where I needed to go. And I had to reread it for the 74th time. And I am still not clear. I don't know the customer scenario with this ISV. We'd have to have some interview, and that's not really my job. But the concept of multiplexing is any user device that accesses 365, whether directly or indirectly, must be properly licensed. So, licenses are required for users or devices that input, query, or view data from 365 through a pooling device, such as an API interface, a website, web server, Azure function, whatever the case may be. Internal users and devices accessing 365 data indirectly through a website via an API or separate service, I repeat myself, must also be properly licensed regardless of whether they are set up as a 365 user. So any user or device that accesses the service file's data or content provided by a service that is made available through an automated process requires Dynamics 365. My interpretation of this is, let's say you have 25 people in a warehouse, they use handheld scanners, and they are accessing inventory information in Business Central, or they are doing stock counts, or they are basically doing a warehouse operation that is being pushed through an API through third-party ISV software and updating or reading BC data. My interpretation of this is that all 20 of those warehouse users, even though they're using handheld scanners and using a third-party WMS that is then going through an API, my interpretation is all 20 warehouse users must have a 365 license. Now, is that a team member license? Is that a full license? I'm guessing it's a full license. So that's my conservative interpretation of this. Now, what is odd about this request with the ISV says they need a full essential user license is it doesn't talk about ISV solutions. It talks about users or devices. So I don't think that ISV's interpretation is correct. It doesn't make any sense. Now, there may be some alternative non-multiplexing interpretation where that one user license makes sense, but my understanding based on multiplexing is it's the users or devices that access BC. And if they go through that ISV solution, it doesn't matter what the ISV solution does. It matters how many users and devices, and those people must be licensed. So this is like the 27th time this has come up, endless conversations, and I asked about this on Twitter, and the responses are, in my humble opinion, I think, and it's like, okay, and Microsoft does not want to weigh in on this because even the BC team and whoever responds, they don't want to be on the hook for Microsoft licensing interpretations. So that tells you that compliance is probably low. And speaking of compliance, this is not an enforced license requirement. There's nothing technically monitoring who is accessing what through what API and whether the user is licensed or not. So I'm going to guess adoption is what? Compliance is 10%? I don't know. I think GP had the same requirement and they gave up enforcing it because no one complied. At least we're discussing it here. I don't know what compliance is, and they don't make it easy to know how to comply. So Ted says, is the ISV software the device is licensed to access BC data? Then users are accessing the data in the ISV solution. Well, technically, if that ISV solution stores data in Business Central, uses Business Central data structures and the AL programming language, the Business Central architecture, my understanding is that is still Business Central. And even if the user is only talking through that ISV solution, if that ISV solution is using APIs in order to expose, read, update Business Central data or data in Business Central, you need a multiplexing license. Yes. Now, people will argue about this and debate, but that's my conservative interpretation. I am not going to tell a customer what to do. I will just hand them the licensing guide silently and step away and let them interpret which licenses they need or want. Unless Microsoft wants to come up with an easier way to identify this or a catalog. What if it is an out of BC WMS, for instance? Yeah, so if you have a cloud-hosted WMS and it manages your inventory separately, like a 3PL solution, and it only does occasional inventory quantity synchronization, site-to-site transfers, maybe that's acceptable where BC is not the system of record. It is just a after-the-fact update, and you have an independently hosted WMS. I think that would be an appropriate to not have those licenses. Like if I have my sales solution in Salesforce and then occasionally there's data sync between Salesforce and BC, I don't know. Maybe that isn't considered multiplexing because there is no live update of data. There's no live query of data. There's no active updating by users. There's no correlation between user activity and BC data updates. Maybe that constitutes this single user license. Not sure. Yes, step away. Okay, so that was interesting. I revisited that again. Yeah, non-compliance due to confusion. It's like, taxes. I don't know taxes. I'm not about to try to learn taxes, so I have someone do my taxes, and if I get audited, okay. But I don't claim to understand the tax system in the US. So maintaining integrations, this is a perpetual one as well. Anyone who's developed an integration should understand this concern. And this is what I'm currently terming the silently failing system integrations. This one is tough because if you've ever been in IT and you set up a alerting system and then at some point that system fails and it takes you 3 months to realize it, and you're like, why didn't I get the alerts? It's because the SMTP or email configuration stopped working. That is what I'm talking about. And this happens constantly on my NAS, on my firewall, on my VPN appliance. It just happened. My email got upgraded. I forgot to change the SMTP configuration. And so I stopped getting alerts on my VPN. And that's why I started to get the flood of emails all of a sudden on January. So this is the problem. And I was poking around on our app subscription licensing system, and I noticed we had records that had not synced with CRM. And I'm like, relatively recent. So I sent it to my developer. I said, I don't even know what this integration was. I don't remember where we developed it because we did it a few years ago. And he had to dig into it to figure out how that integration works. Turns out that the API secret had expired. And we see this integration was created on 2022. And so here we are, 2025. And yeah, so it's a 2.5 year, whatever, 30-month secret. And there you go. So the API secret expired. Well, we didn't apparently have error handling on that to detect whether Any one of those components failed. And so it just silently failed. And I just accidentally discovered it by looking at data that I would never be looking at, nor should I. And we weren't getting leads. We weren't getting the notifications of license status and stuff like that. So yes, it's just as you do more of these integrations, as you build more systems, these integrations become harder and harder to deal with. So Ted says he sends an email every 4 hours from a monitoring service, so you notice they're not coming. Yes, but it is much harder to notice the absence of an alert, especially when you're normally flooded with them. I have daily builds of my BC Docker containers, and occasionally I notice, like, wait, I haven't received a notification in a while. But that's up to my failing cognitive skills to notice that. So it's the absence of communication that you have to notice, which is rather difficult when you're busy and running around. So yeah, it's one of those things where you constantly have to remember to build in proactive notification, even when things fail, which is sometimes hard. If emails are failing, how do you send an alert? I don't know. Backup email, 3 different emails. Who's checking the email for the notifications? Yeah. And a classic doozy related to this that our customer experienced. Thankfully, it had nothing to do with us. We had a big implementation where the customer used EDI for a few different communication channels, and the third-party consultant that was working with our industry solution helped develop an EDI integration to send out their sales invoices. And it turns out that they had roughly a month, I think, where no sales invoices went out. They thought they submitted it to the EDI integrator, whatever it's called, and through some issue, they thought the invoice was sent, but it wasn't actually sent out via EDI, the next hop. They didn't think to check that, or it wasn't part of their integration. So they had an entire month before they discovered it. They started calling customers for collection calls. Customers like, I never received the invoice. It took them a few weeks to realize they had an entire month where they hadn't sent out invoices. That was not pretty. That directly affected cash flow. So, and on monitoring, Ted says, running a monitor on the same VM host as the VM being monitored. Yeah. So I use whatever the VM monitoring is. It is Kuma, Uptime Kuma. I've got a couple instances of that. I had one instance, realized that sometimes my one instance internally was not reliable. So I went to DigitalOcean, spun up an Uptime Kuma on a DigitalOcean droplet so that I could have external monitoring of the same Azure services, and I'm getting different results. It's wild. And then I noticed that my internal Uptime Kuma had some issue. It wasn't sending alerts, but my external one was. So it's like you need redundant monitoring, then you need internal redundancy to all that communication. So it's the endless rabbit hole monitoring all the way down, right? And upcoming events, próximos eventos. Color Cloud in Hamburg, Germany. Dynamics Con in Chicago in May. Dynamics Minds also in Slovenia in May. Follow Dynamics Minds and Dynamics Con and Color Cloud on Twitter if these are of interest. And go to these sites to register, pre-register, early bird register, whatever the case is. And I need to get some discount registration codes for Dynamics Con. Someone remind me to do that. Summit NA road shows are also going on. We have Los Angeles, Vancouver, Tampa, Atlanta, Dallas, and Denver. And absolutely on these, I've noticed this multiple times, double check the dates up to the week of the event. Yet again, a date has changed. Dallas changed an entire week. So it was like February 24th, moved up to the 18th. So do not make plans to attend these without triple checking the dates before booking any travel. Thursday, jueves. As part of the ERP support team project in El Salvador, we are starting to do testing of real-world support tickets from customers. And boy, are they doozies. I haven't really done broad ERP, full ERP support desk support for many years, probably 2007 when I became independent, started focusing on integrations and dev is when before that was the only time that I really dealt with this. And boy, some of these are like, okay, we're getting an EFT file format error. I get that. I can understand the technical things, but it's kind of tricky. What do you fix? How do you fix it? What's causing the error from the bank? Okay. Then how do I record loan payments with interest? I had a guess. I was close, chose the wrong journal type and wasn't sure. Do you do separate entries for interest? How does that customer record interest? How did they record the loan in the first place? Is it related to a vendor? Do you need a payment journal or a general journal? And so I just wasn't certain of the best way. And so Alyssa is helping us learn how to answer these. Entering bank account transfers. I was close on that one. But again, got it wrong on the journal type. And then the GL account balance does not match the bank account balance. So what I would call a subledger reconciliation there. I've never done that in BC, and it's been since like 2005, 2006 since I did it in GP. I'm just super rusty on that subledger reconciliation. So Berlin is learning it. I'm resurrecting my very cobweb knowledge on those things. And so it is tough seeing the number of different topics that come in on a support help desk. And boy, it is humbling. And then we got a great question. We're evaluating the support plans we're offering through the ERP support team. These are annual subscription support services with full help desk. And it's like, okay, you'll get 2 support tickets a month as part of this plan. And so we got a good question as we are talking to partners about providing this. What is a support ticket? It sounds like an obvious question, but when you start discussing the details, it gets really tricky. So is I need a new user a support ticket? Resetting password a support ticket? Changing a configuration support ticket? Training a user on how to do a given transaction a support ticket? Teaching a user how to do a subledger reconciliation? Is that a support ticket? So if there is a BC error that is due to some issue on the BC side, not due to the customer or configuration, it's a bug. Is that a support ticket? Like, how long do those last? What is the scope? What are we responsible for? And those need definitions. So went from offering this to needing to hire a lawyer to draft a full support contract that has all of these terms defined, SLAs, the whole bit. And so working on that and gonna, talk to a lawyer to get that drafted. So not as fun or easy as I would have hoped, but we're making progress. And Friday, live stream. Welcome. Cheers. And I came prepared this morning. I'm double fisting it. We got the latte here with I forgot the name of the coffee, but my favorite latte coffee. And then we have Salvadoran coffee from Good Bean El Salvador in this cup. So passenger coffee, that's my favorite latte coffee. So we have got the live stream, plenty of coffee. And in the endpoint protection cybersecurity world, BlackBerry was still a company. They acquired or somehow got a hold of a endpoint protection solution called Cylance. And I purchased Cylance for my endpoint protection before it was acquired by BlackBerry. I was unaware that BlackBerry acquired it, eventually learned that. And now I got a notification that someone named Arctic Wolf purchased Cylance from BlackBerry. So this thing is changing hands like a hot potato, and I'm just like, oh, come on. It doesn't bode well, I don't think, when something keeps getting bought and sold left and right. So now it's essentially 3 owners during the time I've used Cylance, so not sure how long it's going to last. But now I need to figure this out. They claim it's not going to change, but when they use things, when they use the business euphemisms of these press releases, it's really hard. And then there's BlackBerry Ad Hoc. I don't know what that means, but anyway. So, yep. And then also yesterday I was testing some eBay laptops, and astute observers with a keen eye may notice that next to that USB plug, there is no light. There is no charging light. So out of the 4 used eBay laptops I purchased recently, I've had 2 with issues. One had a bad track point. Not a big deal, but I used the track point, so I returned it, got a refund. This one I noticed right away, the charging port, the USB-C port is loose, and so it's damaged. And if you wiggle the cable, it stops charging. So I submitted a return request, and it's pretty smooth. It's just, now I got to go buy 2 more. So anyway, my success rate on the eBay laptops is dropping, and it seems to be related to the X1 Carbon Gen 9s and the T14s. The newer versions, they've had a rough life, not having the same success rate on those. So, and on to the excellence update. And that is the shiny crew in Berlin, El Salvador, wearing their awesome custom logos that we made for ERP Center of Excellence, looking fancy. And as I mentioned, they're transitioning from training mode over to project and real deal, real world work mode. And so we have the BC Help Desk going live in January, and we are starting to offer those annual support plans for full service BC support. And we are starting a big warehousing project. So David is going to start learning BC warehousing and dig into that. And he has formerly worked at and managed a large distribution center. So he has some background in that. And page scripting is a side project that we're going to be working on. So Jocelyn and I believe Joel are going to learn page scripting and how we can incorporate that into our services and the help desk. And then continuing project on telemetry, and the goal is to provide proactive support. So monitor telemetry actively and know which events we need to look at and have a proactive phone call or support ticket in case there are signals that we detect that are problematic. And Ronald continues to dig into Power Automate. He's going to be building additional sample Business Central Power Automate flows in order to learn that. And Franklin is continuing his AL development journey. And in case you didn't know, I have a YouTube series on Git, and I called it Relearning Git because I'd used Git for years, but never really dug into the nitty gritty of how to use VS Code commands or the UI and the actual console terminal commands to do all of the stuff required to use Git properly. So I have like a 7 video series, hours of content on how to do Git, how to do the pretty lines in Git branching and merge them and all that stuff. So Franklin is doing that from scratch, watching all those videos to just get up to speed on Git and DevOps. Ted asks, what gen does Lenovo start using USB-C charging? They've been using USB-C charging for years, just depends on the model. X1 Carbon has been using it, since Gen 4, probably before Gen 4, 65 watt USB-C. So it's been fine. It's just naturally USB-C ports are not as rugged as some of the dedicated power ports. So you whack that plug a few times and the USB-C port is damaged, and that is on the system board. So that requires a full system board replacement. So this is the first one I've had where the port was clearly like physically damaged. We have had one where the charging port, it's a common issue where X1 Carbon, the USB charging ports die or the charging circuitry fries. So we had a bad port there. And then we just had a dead motherboard. So, it is what it is. Not sure what to do about it, but that's why I test them before I send them over to El Salvador and get them replaced. So we have our hands full over at Berlin, El Salvador. They will be very busy, but they're learning left and right. So it's working out good. Q&A. And que tengas un buen fin de semana. Have a good weekend. And I believe it was yesterday morning, I was on a call with the team in Berlin, and they all paused for a second, and they said, oh, Earthquake. Apparently is a pretty good one. Roughly 6 was their seat of the pants guess. And I asked them what the Spanish words were for earthquake, or the word. Turns out they have multiple words. And one is temblor, and like trembler is my guess is the English translation. And then sismo, which I thought was pretty cool, seismic. So temblor, sismo, those are for kind of day-to-day, your average daily El Salvador earthquake. And for something really large, this is what Google Translate would propose. But this is only for like 7.0 plus where buildings are collapsing, really disastrous. And that is terremoto. And so a terremoto would be a big earthquake. So they said these are not interchangeable. You would not call a small earthquake a terremoto. You would say a temblor or a sismo. So very interesting. Good times. And Q&A. There we go. If anyone is interested in buying property in El Salvador, I was asked to share that there's a house available for sale in Berlin. It's a fairly nice house by Berlin standards. It looks like it's roughly 3-story, if I'm interpreting that right. You got your first floor and then 2 upstairs floors. So that's available. If anyone's interested, hit me up. If you know Berlin, it is by the Gasolinero Uno, the Uno gas station. So kind of on the bottom corner of town. And last night, while preparing this slide, like I was hitting save, thankfully, just hit save, just finalizing everything. And I heard a beep and everything shut off. Apparently there was a minor flicker in the power, and my trusty APC UPS, battery replaced in November 2022, 3 years ago, had a slight power flicker and it shut off and just started screaming Bloody Murray. So I need to go look up what like a B04 fault code is and see if it's just a battery or see if I need to replace this UPS and see when I bought these things. So that expense is upon me apparently. And I've got 2 of these bad boys, so I should probably replace both at the same time. Good times. Yeah, fortunately, my desktop was okay, booted right up, and yeah. So now I might just need a UPS in order to back up my UPS in order to back up my computer. Yes, redundant UPSs. Good times. So with that, que tengas un buen fin de semana, and I am on to coffee cup numero 2, and hey, have a good weekend, go learn something, and enjoy.
Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Jeeps